This conference will now be
O'clock.
recorded.
Today is June the 22nd, Thursday. Um, we do have a quorum, so the Rome City Council meeting will now come to order. This is a regular meeting, and we'll start out with our invocation with Pastor Van Zandt. I'm so glad you're here, sir.
Bow your heads, close your eyes. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day and thank you for everything that you blessed us with, Lord. I pray that you'll please us to allow this city to continue to prosper. I pray that you'll put your guiding hand upon our elected officials, and I pray that you'll please us allow us as patrons to show our support, and I pray that you'll please us continue to be with the first responders, especially during uh, this heat, and I pray that you'll please us protect them, and I pray that you'll just allow them to get the proper fluids and the proper needs that they need. And I pray that you'll just allow the citizens of Rome to also to be there for our first responders. Lord, I pray for our police chief and our fire chief, and I pray that you'll please just give them wisdom, and I pray that you'll just place your protective hand upon them, and also those that are underneath their guidance and their care. Lord, I pray that you'll please just be with our mayor and just be with our city administrator, and I pray that you'll just be with our city council as well, and I pray that you'll just allow us to just make the right decisions guided by your hand. Lord, we ask these things in Jesus' name.
Okay, we'll go to public comments. Council is not permitted to take action on or discuss any comments made to the council at this time concerning on an item not listed on the agenda. However, a council member or mayor may make a statement of fact regarding the item, make a statement concerning the policy regarding the item, and/or may propose that the item be placed on a future agenda or direct the city administrator to contact the individual to address. If you are attending the meeting via live streaming, and you would like to make a public comment, you must email the city secretary at citysecretary@cityofrome.com prior to 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting and must identify each subject you plan to present to be recognized. If the writer of a public comment is unable to read their own comment, it should be given to a friend, family member, or associate that is able to attend in person and read the statement in their stead. Public comments made in person require the speaker to submit the sign-up form to the city secretary prior to the meeting, and the form must identify each subject the speaker plans to present. A statement of no more than 3 minutes may be made. There will be no yielding of time to another person. Comments should be directed to the entire council, not individual members. Engaging in verbal attacks or comments intended to insult, abuse, malign, or slander any individuals shall be cause for termination of time privileges and removal from council chambers. What you got, Ms. Odom?
All right, up first we have Lisa Wilson by Joanne Wilson regarding car shows, Facebook, and code enforcement.
This is on behalf of Lisa Wilson, 240 West First, Mayor and Council members. This Saturday, Rome Veterans Car Show and vendor booths is set up to be at the Boyd Community Center. Everybody please make plans to attend. Of course, the car show's outside, but there is air conditioning in the community center, so keep that in mind, and some vendors will be in there. City of Rome Facebook page. On social media has been loaded with a lot of city information and events. Amanda is doing a good job keeping it transparent and updated. Citizens have noticed recently there is not a camera icon to post pictures or information. This makes it impossible for residents to post things, unless that is the intent. There are numerous churches, groups, and businesses in our town that could benefit from advertising or promoting on this page. Also, Neighbors Helping Neighbors or nearby town events could be promoted. I personally believe there is a need to post a camera icon so people can promote an event. Just a suggestion. Lastly, code enforcement, and this is by no means a slam at Public Works or anybody particularly, but during the special meeting held June the 17th, it was mentioned several times about developers having an interest in our city. With QT coming to town and others hopefully on the horizon, I believe this is a welcome addition and look forward to more businesses coming our way. However, I urge each and every one on the governing body to drive around all of Rome, not just your neighborhood, but all 5 areas of Rome. And look yourself and just see what you would see if you were a developer wanting to come to Rome, or a business wanting to come to Rome, or even a resident. Would you want to join an area that is so in need of cleanup and a show of pride? Look at the railroad property on Old Mill, property around Dollar General and other businesses we were hoping were coming, and some residential property. Each council member should ask themselves, what can I do to help this situation? I urge you to revisit the ordinance which addresses personal real property and city property and clarify the meaning and make sure that all are familiar with this as to whose responsibility it is. Shannon says I got to be quiet, but appreciate it, and this is by no means a slam at Public Works. Thank you.
Next, we have Yolanda Heinsohn regarding a special event.
Good evening. I just want to give you all a quick reminder, July 1st, we've got the event, bounce houses, food trucks, we've got Texas ice cream coming. So we've got music, so bring the kids, the family, come have a good time so we can keep doing more of these events for everybody. It was the property shop, myself, my husband's company, and then H&R Block. We all came together very quickly to put it together, but there should be a flyer going around as well. So I hope to see you all there. Oh, 11 to 1, right here, July 1st. Yes, right over there. Parking lot. Bounce houses, you won't be able to miss them.
Next, we have Shirley Mize regarding water, sewage, grants, buildings, and website.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Shirley Mize. I live at 170 Russell. I wanted to bring to the table today water and sewage infrastructure. We need to understand what our plan is for our future. I don't think that we really have a plan yet. I think that we need a plan, and I don't think that we need to wait to get that plan. If we wait around till water gets to us, then we're too late. And I know water's going in or being driven to this area, but we don't have a plan of how we're going to get to Rome. And I think we need that plan. So I'd like to request, possibly to put on the agenda, water and sewage infrastructure. What the plan is, where the financing is going to come, and what direction we're going to go with this infrastructure for growth. I know that they're talking about bringing water to Justin. I know that they're talking about bringing water to North Star, but where's the pipe? We don't have the pipe, we can't get the water. And we don't really have a secondary yet. We're all talking about, oh, let's up the water source that we have today. Well, that's not going to be 100%.
I think that we need to have a secondary just in case something falls short. And with the growth that we've got in this area and the water that we're giving them and the sewage, we need a sewage update of the west side. And not sure how we're going to get there, but we need to have that plan and we need to work towards it. Grants. I don't understand why we don't have somebody here that is educated on grants. But I think we need to educate ourselves and find out how to do that. So I'd like to have that put in the agenda, maybe a committee formed. So that way possibly we can get started on where can we get free money. We need help. Buildings. I need to understand also where the update of our buildings are. I would like to see where the time, date, place, meetings of this new committee that we've got started. I would like to attend those meetings. I want to know how our plan is, what the financing is going to be. We're not getting started. All we do is talk about it. So I think that that needs to go on the agenda as well. Website. I think that we need more information put on our website. I don't deal with Facebook. I do deal with websites. So if we could get that on the agenda, I would appreciate it.
Next, we have Tommy Eason regarding code compliance.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Tommy Eason, and I live at 1107 Mount Lane. The reason I'm coming up here talking about code compliance is because I feel, and I know a lot of people in this town feel, until the city gets their code compliances all set up, like ADA, like cleaning up the buildings and getting everything electrical and plumbing and everything right, why are we bothering with so much code compliance on the agendas? Yeah, I mean, every time I come in here, it's an agenda is something about code compliance. Let's fix the city with their code compliance before we worry about the citizens. Thank you.
That's the end of public comment.
Announcements from mayor and council members. Hazardous waste pickup July 11th, 2023. And then I'm guessing we will have bulk pickup July 5th since City Hall's closed.
Actually, we talked to the vendor and they said they would still be picking up as usual on July 4th.
On July 4th, okay. Then hazardous waste pickup July 11th, 2023. City Hall will be closed Tuesday, July 4th, 2023. And a city council meeting July 13th, 2023 at 6 o'clock p.m. And just a reminder, Mrs. Beecraft isn't here, but our Rhome veterans, our own Rhome veterans will have their car show on Saturday, I believe. Do you know what time, Shirley? 9 to 4. Okay. It's over in Boyd at the community center. All right. Any other announcements from council?
Yes, I believe the fire department had to reschedule their splash days, so that's this Saturday also from 11 to 3. And it's at the fire department.
And just so council's aware, we did list, we also have cones with the cop on Saturday. We have splash days and we have the car show. All three of those were put out on the Facebook page this morning. So hopefully that will help drive some attendance and get people there. And we hope to see people at those events.
Anything else? All right, let's go to consent agenda. There's 2 items on here. The second one, minutes of the city council workshop session dated June the 17th, 2023. Carvin, do I need permission to take that and put that on regular agenda? Okay. Does anyone have any objection? Because I've got some questions. No? Okay. Do you need an official vote? Is that okay? Okay. All right. So I'll have you guys go ahead and ask you guys to go ahead and vote on the minutes of City Council regular session dated June 8th, 2023.
Make a motion to approve the regular consent agenda.
Okay.
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Number 2, the minutes of the city council workshop session dated June the 17th, 2023. I just have some questions on that, because it's my understanding with a special meeting, anything, Mr. Atkins, I believe you said a few weeks ago, anything that's not a regularly scheduled meeting is a special meeting. Okay. Okay. Well, actually, I'm looking at I was looking at state statutes. The minutes read on here that Mayor Pro Tem Ty called the meeting to order at 9 a.m. Councilmember Schumake, Councilmember Johnson, and Mayor Mitchell were absent. And but looking at state statute 22.039 says a majority of the number of aldermen established by section 22.031 for the municipality constitutes a quorum. However, at a called meeting or at a meeting to consider the imposition of taxes, 2/3 of the number of aldermen established by that section constitutes a quorum unless provided otherwise. And then TML has a follow-up on that under section 22.039 of local government code. A quorum for a type A city is majority of the number of aldermen, either 3 out of 5 if the aldermen are elected at large, or a majority of aldermen under the ward system. However, when a type A city council meets for the imposition of taxes or a special called meeting, a quorum is 2/3 of the members, 4 out of 5 aldermen. So at this point, my question is, with, we had 3 council members as opposed to 4. And does that affect the validity of that meeting? There was no action taken, but this becomes public record, and somebody could come along at a later date and say, well, wait a minute, that was a special meeting, but there wasn't the required. Okay. So,
I mean, if there wasn't any action taken, then
okay,
a group can get together of less than a quorum and have a meeting. And so in this case, even going by your definition to consider it as a special call, you didn't have a
Okay.
quorum, so technically it's not even a meeting. So again, if there wasn't any action taken, then
so then your stance is that there wasn't a required quorum and no action was taken? Or I'm looking at, and I'll be very honest with you, I get very confused, and I have asked you about certain statutes before for clarification. So does that mean the 22.039 is just, it's not a valid?
well, our ordinance allows for 2 kinds of meetings. It allows for special meetings and it allows
Okay.
for regular meetings. But even, I mean, let's cut to the chase. What is the problem that you need to have solved?
I don't know that there's necessarily a problem other than this is state law.
Well, my opinion is that there was no violation of state law. And there wasn't any action taken, so there's nothing to be undone or redone. I mean, if there had been some
So
action,
you're okay with it?
I am, as a matter of law. Yeah.
All right. Never mind.
I think it also helps us to cover our bases, knowing that there were 3 of us in a room. We do have minutes for that.
Exactly. I'm
So-
not disputing that.
So I think,
Okay.
I think to not call it a meeting, I think it's a safer thing to do is to call it a meeting.
Well, yeah, I mean, even if it were just 2 people, it would still have been considered a meeting.
No, it does require in state law to have a
Okay.
quorum to be an official meeting. So the technicality that you're raising is, do you have to have a supermajority? And in this instance, it doesn't sound like you were addressing anything that required a supermajority. So then it becomes a technical question of, was it a called meeting? Probably was. probably was a called special meeting because it didn't fall on the Thursday night of our regular.
So therefore, the 2/3 is not required.
No, that's not what I said, actually. Um, I haven't made an assessment of whether the meeting on last Saturday was a special or called meeting. The statute you're referring to refers to called meetings.
Right.
Our ordinance doesn't address called meetings. Our ordinance only addresses regular meetings, or in the alternative, it says that we can have special meetings on other nights as properly posted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. So as I understand it, the meeting on Saturday, which I didn't attend, was properly posted 72 hours in advance. If a quorum was present for a properly posted meeting, then that is a legal, legitimate meeting under the Open Meetings Act. If there is a problem with the meeting, which I'm inferring from your question, then the next question for the lawyer is to ask, what wrong needs to be righted? And there are several options available to us. We can ratify any action that was taken if we need to ratify something. If there was some action that is void or voidable, we need to address that. But it doesn't sound like there was any action taken. So if there's no action taken, there's nothing to be undone. The meeting was legal. It was properly posted, and there's no standing to
I was just questioning
object.
the validity. You know, if this is what the state statute has. That's
I'm
where I
sorry,
get
Mayor,
confused.
can we discuss this after we do the police officer,
We're almost done.
sergeant?
I
Oh,
know.
okay.
Yeah, well, I was just going to get clarification. So your official legal opinion is it's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so we need to get a vote then on that. Minutes of City Council workshop session dated June 17th, 2023.
Motion to approve the minutes from June 17th, 2023.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson? All right. And then we'll go to regular agenda, promotional swearing in of Sergeant Sid Grant.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor. Sid, if I can get you to come up here for a second. So when we have a promotional opportunity, it's my job as chief to find somebody with talent, somebody experienced, somebody with knowledge that can best fulfill that role of the position that we're looking for. And in this case, as a sergeant, that's what I'm looking for. And I will tell you that the man standing to my left, Sid Grant, he has all three of those and more. One of the things that I like best about Sid is his drive and his tenacity to get the job done. When most of you know, when we had an opening for code enforcement, the meeting I asked about that, I said, hey guys, all the department was there. And I said, hey guys, I need a volunteer. And before I could even explain what it was for, Sid just raised his hand. And I said, well, don't you want to hear what it's about first? And he goes, no, if you need help, I'm here. What do you need? And so that's who he is. But that can also be a detriment. And I'll tell a little story about that real quick. Won't take long. We were here in this very room last week or the week before for municipal court. And Officer Roberson was working his bailiff. And he had to take a short break. So he said, hey, Sid, can you cover my spot here at the door for just a couple minutes? And I'm standing there next to Sid. And Sid's way of wanting to make everything better, it wasn't about 30 seconds in that he turns to me and he says, hey, Chief, I think I've got some ideas how we can improve this process with municipal court. And I don't recommend this as a leadership tactic, but I just turned to him and I said, shut up. I said, please, I love that about him, that he's always looking to improve. But that is Sid, that's who he is, and he's going to make this department better in a leadership role as a sergeant. And so tonight we're excited to swear him in as a sergeant. But get you guys to come out here in the middle, Sid, get this swearing in, and then he'll have a chance to talk to everyone. Do you want to introduce your family that's here?
It's my lovely wife, Rhonda. You can stand up. I've got to stand up, so go ahead. My daughter Addison, my daughter-in-law Alexis, who's due in just a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and my son Grant.
Fantastic. Well, if I could have you guys gather around Sid, if you will repeat after me. Repeat after me. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I. Now you can just say I. Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of City of Rome Police Sergeant of the state of Texas, and I will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state. So help me God. Congratulations, Sergeant. I'm going to ask his lovely wife to come up and pin this dropped badge.
Okay.
Fantastic.
And for our council members and the mayor who weren't here at our Saturday meeting, one of the things that we discussed was in an effort to instill pride and show appreciation to our staff and our citizens, we would like to join either and represent council, either by the mayor, mayor pro tem, or the entire council in a photo op to celebration. You okay with that? Do you want to do the honors?
Oh, why don't you guys go ahead? I'm not a big picture taker. Go ahead. Can I ask a question? Does this make, do we have like 3 sergeants now with Rex Ritchie and Aaron Saltaire?
No, ma'am.
No. No?
No, ma'am. Sergeant Soltaire is Officer Soltaire.
Thought he was a sergeant.
He is no longer.
I see. Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, very good. Replacement truck for fire and EMS services. That would be Fire Chief Estes. Okay. Does anybody mind if we pass that over for right now? Everybody okay with that? All right. Number 3, American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an item that I have been in contact with our Grant Works administrator that is reminding us that we still have a little bit of money left in those funds that were given to us way back in 2021-22 that we need to commit by the end of this calendar year. That doesn't mean we necessarily have to have expended them, but we have to have committed them to a purchase. You will see in the bottom of your agenda commentary that I listed the 6 things that we have filed on record that this money was expended for, along with the subtotal that we spent about $213,000 of the roughly $457,000 that the city of Rome was allocated. As you know, Grant Works handles the reporting and tracking of all funds that we receive that are altruistic in nature or given to us on behalf of the city. And if you will look to the back of your agenda commentary, if you have that with you, I have listed several things that council could consider spending this on. I do also have some suggestions if you're interested in those. But basically, the money can be used for hardware or software for operations, equipment purchases, construction fees, infrastructure upgrades, things of that nature, anything that is due to the day-to-day running of the city. So we do need to determine not necessarily the full allocation this evening, but we do need to look at that between now and the next probably 60 days and determine how we'd like to commit this money so that we can start moving that forward and we get it all done by the time deadline that they have given us. What questions?
Do we have anything on this list that's critical? It needs to be done now.
We do. Chief Estes will be back in a bit. There are several things in the police department and the fire department that are important. For instance, repair of the existing apparatus. We have one fire truck that is not going to pass its inspection, and we very much need that, especially for us to pass our ISO rating. We estimate that to be about $30,000 for that expense. We also need additional hose and nozzle replacements for approximately $24,000 and extraction tools for accidents at about $32,000. The police department has a few things listed here that they'd like to have. I'm sure Chief Davis could speak to what he would prefer one over another. For the administration department, anything you see located there under technology and then the CPA accounting assistance, those would be my recommendations to you, mostly because the things that come through Public Works, I've already started speaking with Jesus about that we're going to look for Grant Works and see what is available so they can come present to you what those options are. Because those are all going to be pretty much big ticket items. They are looking at some point, we have the backhoe that we purchased, and so that would be something, Jesus, that was what, 17,000 for the cover roughly? I think somewhere in there, but right now that backhoe is stored underneath the elevated tank, and we need to get it into its own home so that that can be out of the way and sheltered from the elements, but also in a very accessible place for them. The concern is every time you pull that in and out, we don't want to run the risk of damaging the elevated tower. So if it had its own cover, that would be a better use of those funds. So of those, I think Chief Estes, Jesus, or Chief Debus is here and could answer any other questions you have relative to the money.
Chief Davis, do you want to tell us which ones, like a priority of which ones you need?
Want your list?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So this list that we came up with is basically just items that would allow the efficiency and the good work of the department to be much better. We have a problem right now with our WatchGuard video system. Without going into detail, it's just not working very well for us. Customer service is not very good, and it's deficient in its operation. So to change that from that to a different provider would be beneficial to our officers as well as the staff. In addition to that, the other main thing that I think is important, if we're going to do a projection of a few years out, a forecast on what would be important for our department moving forward, is we desperately need a records management system. The system we have now, which is called CopSync, is not a records management system. It is strictly just a database for data entry. So there's no case management. We can't track cases. The CID side of it, the criminal investigation side of it, is deficient. So there's no way to track a case all the way through, assign it to a detective, and then have an overall completion to it. It doesn't allow for that. They do have a system that does do that, but it's more expensive, and so we've never entertained the idea of actually purchasing that. We just make do with what we have now. The other items on that list are things that would be better for the officers, but certainly can be put on a wing.
Chief Debus, these items, and I would also ask about the fire department items. Are these items that will require ongoing expenses? For instance, I know software, you're going to have maintenance expenses in future years.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Uh,
The prices there you see would be for 5 years.
okay. Amanda, now I know we sent out a survey. Was there anything glaring in that survey, the results that we haven't gotten yet, that the citizens requested?
Other than street repair and infrastructure improvement, um, a lot of people favored events put on by the city, but I am not sure that events would fall under ARPA funds. And street repair and others are going to exceed the monies that we have extremely quickly.
I guess
So,
my only point being is that a lot of these items really fit into a longer term strategy and perhaps should be budgeted in the regular budget as opposed to a one-time expenditure. My thoughts are that the one-time expenditure should be for something that we ordinarily wouldn't get. And that's just my thought and my opinion. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the reason I put those on there is it gives us a 5-year jump on that process.
Those body worn cameras, is that going to be a safety issue at all? The ones they have now, is it considered a safety issue for them?
I wouldn't go so far as to say that. I'm not going to try to sell this in some capacity that's safety issue. They're just not as reliable as I would expect them to be.
so like I mentioned to council, there's no requirement for you to allocate the funds this evening, but I am bringing this to you through that lens. Even if they're not funded through the ARPA funds, staff are creating a list of things that we absolutely need to have. And that will be brought to you during the budget workshop to have that conversation so that you are aware of kind of where we need to go to meet just basic needs of the city. So this was something, knowing that we needed to start bringing this forward that contains some one-time expenses that may be something council wants to look at to allocate the funds to. But yes, Mr. Loftus, you're correct. Anything that's going to be ongoing would then have to be built into the budget, and we need to make sure we can fund it. Otherwise, it's not necessarily money that we've spent well.
And so do we have those funds now? Or
Yes.
we do. So something like the fire truck that's leaking all of the water out of it and can't pass the pump test, that could be something that maybe we would fix right now.
That's, I believe, Chief, if you'll correct me, that's the one that we listed there of repair of apparatus for approximately 30,000.
As far as streets, now I noticed we have a lot of gravel on the streets. What does that do to the street wear? Does it make the streets last longer to have gravel laying around them? Or does it shorten the
Are you meaning in Ellis, Mr. Loftus, or?
life? I'm meaning everywhere through the town.
What was your question again?
Now, I notice there is a lot of gravel just laying on the streets. And so does that lengthen the life of the street or shorten the life of the street?
I would have to get back to you on that. Essentially, it's just gravel coming up from when it rains a lot. So it's really not like it's coming up out of the ground. It's coming out of the side.
All right.
So it's really nothing.
It's dangerous for
Oh,
motorcycles.
yeah,
things
yeah,
like that.
exactly.
So one of the things that we've talked about is how we address those long-term infrastructure needs as it relates to streets. And that's going to be a bit more than our ARPA funds and a bit more than what we budget each year for streets. And it's something that will come forward as a 5-year look or planning period for council to start considering. There are different ways that we may be able to address this, but it's going to require some additional research, if you will. Just to bring you up to date on the gravel that you may have noticed in Ellis, we are going to have the county come back and re-roll that area again as it's getting hot, as well as sweep off any additional excess again, just to see if we can help make that a little more livable. We did notice in driving through Ellis that the main thoroughfares had packed down pretty well, but some of the side streets did not. I've been in contact with a resident who has brought that question to our attention, And this is about the only recourse we have to try and make that more passable.
So if we wanted to say that we want to repair the fire truck tonight, we could say, yeah, let's do that. Is that something that would be acceptable?
Someone could make a motion unless Marvin tells me something different, and then as
What?
long as it,
I just wanted to talk about it because, I mean, we've got a fire truck that can't fight fire.
I'd also like to hear directly from Chief Estes about what you think on this list are the top priorities.
I was kind of left out of this because I was on the phone. So let me catch up just a second. On the repair of the apparatus, originally it was going to cost around $30,000, and that was just to get the motor repaired. And I took it to Cummings, and they actually repaired it for right at $7,000 for the motor. But the motor had to be working with all the oil leaks out before we could get it pump tested. Have a pump test scheduled for a week from now. So I will know more after that pump test. We ran, I know it sounds goofy, but we ran Dawn soap is what you run through most fire trucks to get the valves and stuff from sticking. And that's what most of the leaks are coming from. So we're going to run one more round through it before the pump test, and hopefully it'll pass the pump test. Now that doesn't mean that it's not in dire need of other repairs. And the money would go directly to put into that truck and try to keep it running for maybe another year or two, because it's well past its prime of being in service as a usable truck.
and also as part of your budget workshop, we will bring forward an inventory of all the apparatus, the age at which we acquired it, if it was new or used, and where the lifespan ended on everything that you have that's rolling stock. So that's coming to you as well.
Is that truck in service then?
Yeah, it's in service right
Okay.
now, but if we say the ISO came in and did an ISO right now, we're not scheduled until 2026 for another rating. If they came in and did a rating, neither one of our trucks passed the pump test. If that happened, we'd go from a 4X out, ETJ 4X out there, 4 for the city. We'd go to the top out of 10, which means your insurance rate will go really high. And it's already going to go up about another 25% just because of insurance costs on its own, not anything with the ISO, just because insurance is going up. So it'd really raise your rates if we didn't have one to pass a pump test. Now, on the other item, as far as the extrication tools, the wreck I just went on was supposedly somebody trapped, and it wasn't, just yanked the door open and got her out. But when you're by yourself like we are, we're so short-staffed here. I went there and I had to run command for myself, had to watch out for traffic, and it's on 287 at 5 o'clock, really busy. So your head's on a swivel. With our extrication tools we have now, they're very heavy. They weigh a lot. You have to take the tool, carry it to the car, go back, get the hoses, carry it to the car, go back and get your fire plant and carry it to a car. Now, these extrication tools here are battery operated. So you grab them out of the side, you go to the car and you start cutting or spreading whatever you got to do. It's that fast. So that to me is one of the top priorities of extrication tool, because we do run a number of wrecks and entrapments in the city and on the ETJ. But that is a big priority for me.
My opinion is that we wait till the budget meeting. We budget everything we can. And the things that we can't fit in that we really need, I think that's what this money needs to do. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have a budget meeting set?
We do not have entire consensus for that. It seems like most people are available potentially on July the 14th, which is a Friday. We seem to have some conflicts with the time potentially, and Mr. Johnson's not sure yet, but if he cannot be there, I can update him separately. So Most of you are available from 1 to 6 on the 14th, but the mayor prefers the morning time. So would you prefer 9 to 2? Does that work? Okay. Then yes, we should be good for that meeting, and we can have that conversation then. And Mr. Johnson, you just let me know what it looks like for you and your schedule, and if I need to, I'll meet you up here after hours or on a Saturday and get you up to speed on what they discussed. At 9 a.m. or of an evening? All right, I'll keep that in mind.
Chief Estes and Chief Divas, is there anything on the list that you feel is an urgent need that could wait until after our budget meeting, July 14th? Isn't it?
I will tell you that in the fire department budget, we have pretty much expended all funds as it relates to repairs. We have some very elderly apparatus, and one of the things that Chief Estes has done an excellent job is doing an analysis of where we need to improve some of those things, and has done a really good job of getting our rolling stock back up and running. So if you made that approval up to $30,000 and it comes in less, then of course we don't expend that money.
Yeah, I so move that we fixed it with the ARPA funds.
I second the motion for $30,000 from the ARPA fund to be used towards the repair of existing apparatus for the fire department.
And the extraction tools, do you want to consider that now or later?
At least we'll have the fire truck in service.
Chief.
We do need a vote on the motion. So if council wants to consider any of that, we would need to amend the motion, or we need to vote on the motion that's on the floor.
I move that any money left over from the repair of the engine go toward extraction tools. Then we'll allocate the rest at a later time. Amendment to the existing motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So up to 30,000, but anything left over for that goes for the extrication tools. All right. Okay, let's go back to the replacement truck for fire and EMS services.
Chief Estes, if you wouldn't mind joining us, please, sir. So one of the things that Scott and I have been discussing is what we can do for a command vehicle for the fire department. You will see that he has done some shopping, and we would like to purchase a used truck that he could respond directly from wherever he is for an event that occurs within the city limits or the ETJ. One of the things that we discussed is the funding of this type of a vehicle. They raised about $14,776 for the auction. We sold another vehicle for $1,000, so that brings us to $15,776. And then the brush truck that we sold for $18,500 gives us $34,276. So what we are asking, and you do see attached to your agenda memo, Chief Estes has provided some examples of the type of trucks that he is looking for. It's nothing that is, it's not leather, it's not fancy, it's a basic work truck that gives him room to keep his gear as well as some of his tools, so that wherever he's at, he can respond directly. And I'm going to turn it over to you if you would like to add any additional information.
The reason why I was requesting the command vehicle is like today, for example, I went to Walmart, I went to a mattress place, and I went to Lowe's to gather stuff. I go to Fort Worth to get uniforms. I've used my truck numerous times while I'm on duty, and I personally, well, my wife personally thinks I shouldn't do that. But I told her it's part of the job, and I said if we can ever work it in to get a command vehicle, I will. But I wanted to get the station up to par right now. We're getting there, close, making it livable for people to stay there overnight. So that job's almost done, and we got just a little bit of money in that pot. We were talking, city administrator, we were talking about the funds that we have left over that we haven't touched yet. I found a vehicle for about $28,000. It's got 50,000 miles. It's a 2020, so it will last a command vehicle will last 10 to 15 years from there. So we're looking at long term keeping of that as long as it gets maintenance schedule. And that's what we've implemented over here is a regular maintenance schedule. I have a shop that's we're going to take it to, they're going to do it on hours, not mileage. Because on a diesel, anything else you need to run on hours, not mileage. So we're going to be very specific about that, make sure it gets done on the right time so these vehicles will last a little bit longer than what they have. Because neglect is what's caused this in the past. And most of the neglect came from not having the money to fix them. But if you fix them up front, you won't have to worry about the big dollar later. The command vehicle will give me a chance to have my equipment in it, like the city administrator said. I'll have fire extinguisher, I'll have fire equipment. I can show up on scene. I can do a 360. Somebody trapped, I could actually do a search, enter, and vent really fast to get somebody out of the window if I had to, in my gear with my air pack. And that's the main reason, because I have to come from my house to here to get a vehicle and then go from here back to the call. And sometimes I have to drive past the call to come get my stuff because I'm not keeping percentage in gear in my own personal vehicle. I'm not going to do that. I like to live a little longer than that. So that's the reason.
Does the vehicle or the truck you found already have emergency lights? Is it fully equipped with everything?
It does not, but that's why I'm looking for a $20-something thousand vehicle. It's going to cost a couple of thousand to get lights, and I've already got a radio purchase for it because the other vehicle that we sold in the auction was falling apart. Chief Davis was kind enough to let us have one back in the day, but it was the wheels that ran off of it, and it's done its time, so that's why we sold it in the auction. So yes, it'll cost a couple of thousand, but we're still going to stay under the amount that we have. We'll have money left over.
And this would be a marked vehicle.
Yes. I do not want an unmarked vehicle. I want it to say your own fire department with lights on it so people know who I am, where I am.
And can you explain the funds again?
It was from the auction that we had all the junk out back. There was $14,700, somewhere in that range. And then we had a vehicle that was a U.S. property type vehicle that we finally figured out that we could get rid of it. The guy bought us $1,000. We sold it to him. So it's about $15,700. And then the brush truck that we were talking about several meetings ago that I got a skid unit for, and then we sold them that. We're going to get the grant money for the 18.5. So we actually had 18.5. So that's where the 18.5 and the 15.7 is coming from. So it's just money sitting there in the savings account.
Yeah, I make a motion that we allow y'all to purchase the vehicle not to exceed 30,000.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I want to personally thank you. It's a need.
And, all right, let's go on to number 4, water usage during an event by citizens. And that would be Mr. Loftus.
Yeah, I have actually two items on this tonight. And one of them is the Rhome Library event. They are planning on having a water slide. And with the water slide, it necessitates the use of water at the family park. Apparently, no one has ever asked to use water at the family park in the past. And we need direction from the city council to enable the usage of water at the city park for the Rhome Community Library event. I have asked Michelle Ty to place a motion to allow this one-time usage of water so that we can see how it goes and make a decision about future events based on it.
So when we use something like this, is it the city getting charged for the water? Is that correct?
Yes.
Amanda, how in cities previously, how has that worked?
In cities previously, they have either a park use fee or some sort of a deposit, and it will often include electricity and water, depending upon. We have not had the infrastructure to meter the water, whether you decide it's going to be full cost recovery or if it's going to be subsidized by the city to that extent. I do think that as we continue to grow as a city, we need to flesh that out because that's been discussed in our community. And I do have direction from council to bring that back, but not this month. And so that would be one of the things if we want to move forward now, and then to Mr. Loftus's point, see how all of this transacts, and then I will have some more data that I could bring to you in that event.
As information, I have talked to Chief Estes regarding the use of the water slide, and his water slide uses approximately 400 gallons of water in 4 hours. I would suspect we use about 600 gallons is what I'm guessing. So just as information.
All right. I move that the Rome Community Library event scheduled for August 5th, 2023 be allowed to use water resources available at the park.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
This is August 5th.
August.
Okay. And then number 5. Code
Actually, it wasn't.
I'm sorry.
Well, I forgot to.
That's okay.
Yeah, what I've noticed over the past, living here over the past couple of years, is that there's a lot of misunderstandings about the use of the family park. That's what I observed. After seeing the event application, I think some of it stems from that. It can be clarified by reworking that application. There's also confusion about the presence of food trucks at the family park, and I have some recommendations there. I would recommend that with food trucks we do some sort of annual registration where we charge them a permit and they're free to attend to do any event at the family park based on that permitting. That would clarify that, I believe. And then reasonable water usage guidelines. I actually gave a straw form to Shayna. It's more of for a citizen type form where they can check and choose which resources at the park they want to use. So I just like to put that forward, that the redesign of that form be considered. I observed that it appears to be our pages, first 2 pages appear to have come from the Roanoke form. And Roanoke's forms actually have some additional pieces that I think we might benefit from if we were to borrow that, but I would not use those first 2 pages. How would you like me to proceed with that? Come up with a form again, submit it?
I'm going to have to interrupt at this point. The posted item on the agenda is discussion of water usage during an event. I don't believe a form discussion is on the agenda tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Guess we'll go on to the next one, code enforcement. And got a this is for the city administrator and myself, and I'd asked for this to be put on the agenda the last round. Because we've got one of our local residents that seems to have he's been trying to resolve his concerns with City Hall since February, and he couldn't be at the last meeting, and I got a text from him today, and he said that he was so frustrated that, hopefully they'll get things straightened out. So anyway, I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Mayor. This topic has been something that I have brought on the agenda before for you all to discuss. The citizen involved in this request, I have spent many conversations with them discussing their concerns, as has Chief Debus, as well as has Officer Grant, as we've gone through this process. This involves parking violations and whether or not parking on the street is acceptable or parking in the yard is acceptable. It seems to be centering on a car that belongs to someone in his family. And one of the directions that I was given by council was to look at the codes as they currently exist and see what we may want to update and or how these are being enforced, because back to the conversation that we had earlier, we do have some things in the city that could be cleaned up from the standpoint of furniture in the yard or non-painting of facilities or junked vehicles or just general trash in the yard, if you will. We also have issues every year, according to Officer Grant, about mowing and enforcement of that, and how do we go through that process of making sure that it is kept down to a safe level, because that has health and safety concerns in addition to just the unsightly issue. So I believe, since that resident is not here to speak on behalf of themselves, that they are referring to the ordinance that you have there under the excerpts of the code in the agenda that you will see that talks about it's parking of any vehicle shall be prohibited on the street surface of any public roadway used for vehicular travel within the corporate limits of the city. And of course, anyone who violates that is subject to a citation or a misdemeanor offense, which would be handled in our local municipal court. This incident, I believe, started when the car was left in the street. I believe it has to stay for more than 24 hours. Is that correct, Chief Davis?
The ordinance, our city ordinance as it's currently written, does not allow for any on-street parking for any amount of time, but no citations have been written for that.
There was a warning letter sent that I think started some of this conversation, and we have received additional documentation from the resident who brought this issue up that there are others in that particular neighborhood are parking in their grass or something to that effect. I really am not certain how council wants to go about this, because we do have several areas of the city where people park either in their yard, on their street, or on a semi-improved surface. And we have a little bit of a formal arrangement in some of our neighborhoods, and we have less formal. For instance, in Old Town, you do not have curb and gutter. So that kind of gives some of the formality to where they're parking and where they're not. So in trying to address this issue, I provided you not only with the parking as it relates to personal vehicles, but also commercial vehicles, because we have had several that have been ticketed over by Loves that are parking on Freedom Parkway, which is not allowable in that particular area. And you have another ordinance as it relates to junk vehicles. And we have had complaints from residents on all of these issues. So we either need to update the code that particularly may allow for street parking for 24 hours or might not allow street parking at all. And we need to make sure that we're enforcing it equally across all parts of the city.
So most of these complaints are from other people. Somebody calls in or emails or something and says that there's a violation, or is the officer, the code enforcement officer, going around and saying, oh, I'm going to warn this person, but I'm not going to warn this person?
Well, I'll let Officer Grant speak to that. However, I think he's done an excellent job, giving he's a police officer first, and we do not have a code compliance officer. It was not funded in the budget. And so one of my recommendations to you would be, if we are going to pursue code enforcement, we either need to look at this as a part-time position, or we need to be more concerted in our efforts, because it's very difficult for him to maintain his day job, if you will, and take care of this as well. And certainly with him moving into the sergeant role, that's going to be even more difficult along those lines.
Well, yeah, and I don't understand how, if they're violating the ordinance, he can't go around to every single person in Rome and make sure that everyone is violating or not violating that ordinance.
At any given time. Yes.
Yeah.
Would you like to add to that?
So we have been complaint driven for the most part, with the exception of the grass, because the grass it's a state law and it's a safety concern for rodents. On junked vehicles, and junked vehicles is determined as a vehicle that's parked in the yard on private property in it. And we've had numerous complaints. There have been numerous homes in most parts of the city where we've, over the course of time, worked with resident and removed numbers of cars that have been sitting there for years. And we've all done that without a single citation. It's been working with the resident, but it's been either a phone call or an email, or just approached by a resident. And we've taken the approach that we're not going to go out there and actively look for them. We're going to respond to them. So everything has been to that level. In that particular, we have not enforced any violations of parking in the street. That is a city ordinance, but it's not one that we felt that we need to go enforce. The only ones we have enforced, this particular one, was because they were parked in the front yard. So those, we've had complaints from other residents about people parking in the yards.
So this one was parked in the yard, not
It was
on
not
the
on
street.
the street, it was in the yard. Yes.
Is it a junk vehicle or?
No, sir.
One of the things that you also have in your code that I included is a nuisance or dilapidated buildings section. And this is written such that if anyone's owning, leasing, occupying, or having charge of a premises, that they have a duty to maintain or keep it in repairable order and no nuisance thereon, which would cause substantial diminution in the value of the property in the neighborhood in which such premises is located. Now that's very broad, but it's also something that you will see if, for instance, if you take this through to its end result, if multiple vehicles are parked in the front yard at any given time, you're eventually not going to have a yard, and that will most definitely affect the value of all of the properties around you. So code enforcement is a little bit of, well, it's a great bit of working with the residents and trying to gain that compliance. It's not meant to be punitive. It's meant to be, I don't want to say encouraging, but we're trying to have them partner with the city in that so that we can get these rectified, and citations or anything any further than that is literally a last resort. Now, we have had to use that in certain instances. We have a noise ordinance violation that is also on the books, and we had someone complain repeatedly about motorbikes being run that disturb the peace, and that's been an issue in a particular neighborhood in Rome. And as we continue to grow, this is just going to be an issue as we exponentially get more bodies in here and more people living here with different expectations of, we've still got some areas that are a little bit rural, and we've got some areas that are very structured as it relates to development. So we need to find a way that we are approaching this in a balanced manner, and that we're always looking to gain a compliance rather than cite someone for non-compliance as a first line of defense.
So when you say parking in the street, is this a vehicle that the tags are out on, or anybody and everybody shouldn't be parking in the street?
Yeah, the parking on the street is that any vehicle shall be prohibited on the street surface of any public roadway used for vehicular travel. So it's any car, truck, something of that nature.
But to your concern, Mr. Johnson, we don't enforce that.
Well, I don't see how you actually could, because I've lived here over 20 years. You're going to start telling people they can't park in the street now?
No, this isn't new. This has been on the books. I saw that ordinance when I first was the chief, when I was first hired as the chief here. And I thought to myself, well, I haven't seen an ordinance written like that before, but we're certainly not going to enforce that
Right. I mean,
I think part of
most people back then, had they known it was illegal, wouldn't have bought here to begin with. I wouldn't have.
I don't know what the impetus was for that ordinance. I can't speak to that.
That's been on the books since 1999.
So
We
I-
had several ordinances passed at that time.
And I understand that, but it was not brought to anybody's attention when they were buying houses. So now you're going to start telling them, after 20 years, we're going to write you a ticket for parking in the street.
No, we're not enforcing that.
Okay.
No, to be clear, we are not enforcing that ordinance in any manner.
Okay.
No, the original complaint about this from the gentleman who's called in, his car was parked on the grass. And then I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sergeant, when we talked to him about that, parking in the grass, then he mentioned parking in the street. And we said, we have an ordinance against that, but we don't enforce that. So that'd be fine.
That ordinance needs to change.
Are you making a motion?
If I need to, yes. I'll even second it if I have to.
Go ahead.
I view this as a multifaceted issue with all of these ordinances. I think we brought into question what was the original intent of the ordinance, which I don't think we know. And I also kind of think that is in some way, is this some sort of indirect regulation of occupancy of a property? Just curious.
It can be considered as such, yes.
Yeah. So
Typically, you limit parking on a street so you can allow emergency vehicles passageway. And normally, if that's the case, if that's a concern that a large fire truck would have difficulty maneuvering through that street, you would limit the parking to one side of the street. Not ban it altogether. Certainly not in the entire city.
Back to what the chief was saying, this is something that they try and gain compliance if it's an issue or a complaint comes in and we need to respond to it. We are not actively seeking people and driving through town and writing citations or going and knocking on doors to that extent. Code revision is something that every city struggles with as life goes on, because the immediacy of what needs to be done at the moment, such as budget passage and other conversations, make this a lower priority on the list. But I was asked by council to bring it back in this month at this meeting, and we have done so through that lens. I am not certain how we would deal with this particular resident's complaint and issue, but he has reached out to the mayor, and thus we are bringing it back around for conversation.
He's not had, I mean, what have we done what is his frustration, I guess?
I believe it centered around a letter that he was sent notifying him of the violation and asking him to comply.
What violation? Parking in the grass?
So I was there because he was complaining for something else. And when I spoke to the other person about his complaint, that person at that point then said, well, what about him parking in his front yard? So as fairness, I had to ask him about that. And I had 2 conversations with him verbally where we spoke, and his driveway was open. And I said, it is an ordinance. You just need to park in the driveway. He said, not a problem. And after the 3rd complaint from the person that had received a complaint about something at their house, that's when a letter was sent. Only a letter. No citation was issued. Just a letter that you're in violation. And that's where it comes from.
For parking on the street now?
No.
That one.
Parking in the
other
grass.
one. Parking
In the grass, not on the street. We have nothing to do. I have never made a violation for parking in the street. Ever. Unless it's an abandoned vehicle, and that's totally different. If the wheels have fallen off.
Can we make a motion to remove from the ordinance a violation for parking on the street?
This specific ordinance is not on your agenda this evening. It's just general code enforcement, so we would need to bring it back under a different item at a different time.
Okay, I think we'd like to do that.
Or whatever it is that's normal for cities. Evidently,
Yeah.
that's not normal.
Yeah, I believe it's not only the parking on the street aspect, but there are other things that are highlighted in here that could possibly be improved or clarified.
Well, in the carrying weapons one, I mean, can't we put something like in accordance with state law?
Well,
I
that
mean,
is one of the things that Mr. Johnson brought up, and Mr. Atkins' office is working on an update to us because we don't have the ability to regulate that. So we're going to update that one, and I believe it will be something as simple or close to something as simple as that, that the city of Rome will comply with state law.
Okay.
And I appreciate the city's efforts to continue to just be complaint driven. So we're not looking for it, but if it's a nuisance, if it's bothersome to neighbors, and we know that it's in code, but we also know that we need to revise some of our code.
Thank you, council.
I guess we'll go on to executive session, section 551.071, consultation with attorney pending or contemplated litigation, settlement offer, or to seek advice from attorney. This is regarding docket number 55067 at the Public Utility Commission of Texas. And then also section 551.074, personnel, discuss appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer, employee, or hear complaint or charge against officer or employee in executive session unless officer or employee requests a public hearing, and retaining temporary staff assistant. And it is now 7:16. We will convene into executive session at this time.
And would everyone please turn off their mics before they go in?